Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Andrea and I, and we're going to be talking through efficient meal prep systems. Something that I think at surface level can seem low-key boring. I don't know, or at least I don't know if you feel like that, but it really is so important. And I think that understanding how to make your meal prep seem less daunting, especially if it's not a skill you developed, it's a huge barrier for being, especially in any phase, is a huge barrier to body composition change. So really important, just going to talk through our biggest keys we found with ourselves, with clients, to make it as efficient as possible. I absolutely hate cooking. Do you like to cook?
I don't anymore. I used to. And then once we got more dogs and more kids, I was like, I'm just going to make this as easy as I can.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that very much. So if you are kind of in the same boat, this will probably be very helpful for you. Let's go ahead and then get into kind of your personal updates first. Fill us in, anything new going on this week with your fat loss phase. I know you're only 5 weeks out now, right?
Yeah, as of tomorrow, it'll be exactly 5 weeks. So weight loss was a little slower last week. I was down I think half a pound on average. And this week we're doing sort of a refeed. I'm just eating my high day macros for 3 days and then not doing cardio for those 3 days. So I'm going to end up with one of the days I wouldn't have anyway. And 2 of those days I would have had a high day anyway. So it's not like a giant shift, but it has been great. And I'll have 3 cardios this week, and that's been a nice break for my legs. So I feel really good. I'm down another pound this week so far. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I think now that, and this is my this is my 3rd high day. So after the 2 high days that I've already done so far, I've been down a pound. And so I imagine once I get back into cardio and low days, that's going to keep trending down.
Okay. What made you guys decide to add in the extra calories?
So I didn't really ask specifically, but what she said last week was we might do a refeed, and then my weight loss was slower, and she's like, things are starting to slow down a bit. Essentially said something like, we want to get your metabolism, adapted a little bit back up, and then we'll drop it back down.
So it doesn't sound like you're necessarily planning to dig harder after these refeeds, but probably go back to the same intake, right?
At least for the rest of this week. We'll see what she's got in mind as of next week. But if things keep dropping, then I imagine we'll just keep it as is, but we'll see. The target has been 140, and I'm at 145 5 weeks out.
Nice.
So,
yeah, we're going to crush that.
Yeah.
And
then she said with the peak week, I'll drop some inflammation too. So I'll probably come in, at least on that day, a little under 140.
My prediction is 137.3.
Okay. That would be a pretty big drop in inflammation.
Put it on the paper right now. I think that's what's going to happen. I feel good about it, honestly.
I haven't been that weight since right after I had Nolan, who's 11. Mm-hmm. So...
It is pretty crazy to see, though, how much muscle you built. Quads have come way up. Have you ever seen yourself have nearly as much muscle as you have now? Your upper body, too, your delts in that picture you posted today, especially for, not training upper body hardly for, a year now, it's pretty crazy how much muscle you built.
Yeah, I feel like I've just gotten better at engaging my delts.
Really?
And that's been really helpful, obviously. And, I've been training quads every time I step in the gym basically for over a year now, so I'm really glad that they've come up as much as they have.
You train really, really hard too, but has it been kind of rewarding to see?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I have actually changed.
Yeah, because when you're going through the build phase, and this is for anybody in a build phase, when you're going through the build, you're just I really hope this is working. I really hope that this is doing what I'm wanting it to do. And, like we talked about, I think that was last week, you gain just enough body fat to not be able to see the lines and things. Mm-hmm. And so once you diet back down, that's really whenever you're going to be able to see the difference. So, it's been years or something like that since I've been able to like really see the lines in my legs. So it's nice to be able to be like, oh, okay, I thought it was working, but now I actually have proof that it was working.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely very obvious that you have built a lot of muscle. So well done. I'm proud of you. It's been cool to watch all of the process.
Thank you.
I kind of have the same thing, even like in more of like a smaller scale, but like I think we talked about this recently. There's always that phase of the diet where you're not lean enough yet to actually like see new shreds or like new striations or anything coming through. You're flatter, so your muscles look smaller, and it's just like, oh man, what if I didn't actually make? And you know, objectively, like I have all this data, all these numbers to back up my progress, and this is where like having a coach can be so helpful. I definitely like we both I think these things from time to time as well. There were a couple of weeks there where I was like, oh man, I had not actually made any progress in like the last year, and now I was comparing like my last round of progress pictures I took on Wednesday at like 218 to this time last year. Brandon DeCruz and I did like a 4-week mini cut for my honeymoon, where I was at 203. I was like, damn, I think I'm leaner now.
That's crazy.
It's funny how still it can be so easy to get into your head about like all that, like have I actually made progress or not? I don't know. But again, that's like the value of having all that data to look back on.
Yeah.
But even then, I think it's the hardest to be objective with yourself, which is why even coaches need coaches.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else on your end?
No.
On my end, let's see. This week.
You're 1 week out, right?
Yeah, I guess we leave for Portugal on Tuesday. I am undecided what the move is from here. I'm going to chat with Kyle, my coach, about kind of where his head is at, what he thinks. I want an objective from him as well, like, does it make sense to get leaner? Because I feel like when I look at my progress pictures, it look really lean. You might be able to relate to this. I feel like when I look in the mirror, I'm like, I'm not that lean yet.
For sure.
Definitely, like this week has been a fun one where I've seen a lot of visual changes. Like I've noticed a lot more vascularity in like my delts, my biceps, my legs. Like my adductors have a bunch of veins now that I've never seen before, and have a lot. And like really, it's like my quads coming through more. Like you can see the separation, and I can see the separation just like relax now. Like in my quads has suddenly come through a lot more. Can like see my rec vim, and that's super cool. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this week I've seen really, really big visual changes, and that's the cool part about it is like as you get leaner, like once you hit that certain tipping point where okay, now we're getting pretty lean, like every little bit that you lose, because it's like every pound of body fat is just proportionally so much more to your total fat that you're losing. That I feel like when you get to the point where honestly where both of us are like right now, I think in our fat loss phases, you're further along. Like I think you're leaner than I am, but where we will like every week, like every bit of fat you lose, it's just like, oh wow, that's a big visual change that I'm seeing, and then that's really fun.
Yeah, that's definitely the fun part of the diet. I like whenever clients get there and I can start talking them through that. Like this is when you're gonna really start see visual changes week to week, and this is when it gets fun. So let's stay focused.
I have a couple clients there right now. Like, I think I talked about Carrie last time we were on the podcast too, but like for her, that's where she's been pushing fat loss for a good chunk of time. And now we're getting to where every week is like, dude, your abs are changing so much. That's been really cool to see. But I mean, on my end, I've dropped a lot actually this week. So it's been kind of a interesting week. So actually, I guess it was the 19th, so it was the 27th we're recording this. So was it Wednesday? Yeah, last Wednesday we bumped my cardio from 25 minutes per session, 5x 25 minutes to 5x 40 minutes. And I've actually started to drop pretty quickly since then. So I was like 221 to 222 very consistently. The day after we bumped it, I dropped down to 219. And as of this morning, just this week, like I hung out at 219 for like 5 days. Then I dropped to 218, 217, and 216 as of this morning.
Wow.
So suddenly dropped.
Are you off of the antibiotics now?
Yeah, that though wrapped up. That's been a good like week that's been actually like 2 weeks now that wrapped up. Oh, and that's what we thought that might be part of it.
Yeah.
But I expected to see my weight drop quicker initially than it did. I'm interested to where we go from here though as well. Like what if we refeed and like pull back training, or if we push harder? Because he's shouted a lot about the like if you're not recovering well, those muscle tissues can't store glycogen well, and basically like why my weight didn't move as much initially. So I'm interested to see, because also I for sure have noticed like the last few days like I definitely look a lot flatter, and for sure like feeling like the training isn't quite as good. My sleep has also just been so weird. I don't know, I keep waking up at 3 every morning. I'm just hyped for the day for some reason. So
it definitely sounds like you're getting ready to do a refeed.
I would imagine so, but I'm interested to see how that plays out. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So I mean, basically for sure have like 4 or 5 more days here of pushing. Then I really wouldn't be opposed to getting a little bit leaner from there, depending on like what his take is, but we'll see. Okay, cool. Ready to get into the episode?
Yep, ready.
All right, so first, why meal prep is important, I think is key to understand here, because it doesn't sound like a fun thing. It's not a fun thing. That's okay. I don't think very many of us have a ton of fun with our meal prep, but again, that's okay. It is very important for physique development. Really, I would say a lack of preparation is like structure preparation for most people is why fat loss especially is so hard. So many people will go into a fat loss phase with the goal, with the best intentions. Start every week with, okay, this week I'm gonna hit my macros. This week I'm finally gonna like nail my targets, and then something always happens, something always comes up that throws them off. A lot of times it is just, hey, we're not prepared enough, right? Where if you're just, I'll have time to cook all my meals this week, right? Like my life won't be as crazy as it was last week. Like something always comes up. That's just such a progress killer for so many people. And also it just allows us to have more consistency with our food, which allows for things like your hunger regulation. If we are able to, like I talked about this, like my low days where I have 3 back-to-back meals that are just potatoes and chicken. And it's like those 2,200 calories. Maybe I haven't talked about that, but I have 3 meals. My first meal is like Greek yogurt, berries, oatmeal. Then after that, it's potatoes, sweet potatoes, chicken, white potatoes, chicken. And it is so filling that sometimes I do have to swap that for rice by the last meal because I'm like, damn, I'm just so full. But 2,200 calories isn't a ton for me. So on the flip side, if that was all like even a cream of rice, I would be like cream of rice and whey, I would be very hungry. So it allows us to consistently select foods that allow us to better manage hunger, which typically those are also foods that take preparation. And even be more consistent with our training performance. We know, hey, I consistently have this pre-workout meal that fuels me well, that I feel best with, that we're managing my blood sugar well with. It helps us remove room for error versus, oh shit, well I didn't have my food prepared, so I am gonna like eat this meal out, or we're just kind of grabbing and snacking on bites throughout the day and then kind of tracking everything at the end of the day because we don't have our meals prepped, we don't have time to cook something. It's easier to stick to mentally, especially when you're tired. I think like when you come home and like I had a client, I was talking to him about, we're not even in a fat loss phase, but she was talking about like, I'm just like feel like fatigued with the meal plan. I'm really having a hard time sticking to it. And I think you need more variety. And I am not opposed to more variety. We built out a whole system so she could have more variety, but also I talked through with her like, hey, are you prepping any of your meals ahead? And she's like, I was like, let's talk through a little bit more, like talk me through these instances where you don't feel like sticking to the plan. And she was like, it's like when I get home, it's like 7 p.m. I have to cook for my kid, and then I have to like cook my own meal as well, and like instances like that. And I was like, that doesn't necessarily sound like it's as much like the food as it is. No one, I think, at the end of a long day like wants to like cook a meal, right? And that's where, so I think it's more so a preparation issue that we need to address here. So those are huge. I will say 10 out of 10 times as well, the client that preps ahead, just based on all the above, gets better results. Anything else you would add there?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have your meals prepped ahead, you don't have to decide what you're going to eat. And anytime you have to think about food, that is going to lead to more deviations, more hunger, more cravings. So I always talk about with my clients, we want to make it the path of least resistance. Don't plan for the day that you are feeling the best, have the most motivation, are not busy, because then it's easier to go cook that food. But plan for the day where you're tired, you're busy, you're running out the door. Plan for your worst day and make the path of least resistance just grabbing that meal, because in those moments is when you're going to go toward the path of least resistance. And if you don't have that cooked, then it's going to be not the most optimal food that you go grab for.
Absolutely. I feel like this, I don't know why I feel kind of corny saying this now, but there's the James Clear quote I always give when I'm talking about this specifically with clients, that is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that's meal prep as a system, right? It's knowing at the start of the week, I'm going to need these systems in place. Otherwise, I'm expecting this week for some reason I'll have more willpower to do the thing when I'm tired at 7 p.m. on a Thursday night, and it's going to somehow be different than every other Thursday night. Like, we need to look at your systems, not just like, I'm going to set higher goals for myself this time around. All right, so let's talk through the keys to efficient meal prep. And feel free to jump in here whenever, because I know so little about cooking. But again, if we want to make it efficient, I got you. So one of the biggest keys here is bulk cooking. The more hands-off, the better. So when I'm looking at proteins and cooking proteins, Crock-Pot is a great option. And I'll talk through Crock-Pot chicken every week. I just grab a bunch of chicken breast. I just dump it in the Crock-Pot, dump some seasoning on it, and leave it there overnight. Shred it with a fork the next day. Basically, just falls apart. I feel like I feed my dog like half of it, and that's how I prep my chicken. An oven sheet, which honestly I don't even use like an oven sheet for anything anymore. I'll use the air fryer in place of the oven, like something I would use the oven for. But like an oven, like cooking a bunch of your proteins in the oven at once, rather than if you have to cook your chicken breast 7 days of the week, it's just going to be so much more time consuming.
And dishes.
And the dishes, it's just so much more work as a whole. That's why I think, considering even if your meal prep takes you 30, 40 minutes, even if prepping that one meal takes 20 minutes at very least, daily, and then the dishes and all that stuff, it just adds up so much more. So especially for busy people, this is very important. And then, or just in a big pan. So my other, my two main meat sources that I use for proteins are chicken breast, and right now I have a lean ground beef. I basically just throw my chicken breast in the Crock-Pot. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about this later. So never mind, I'll come back to that. But using a large, just cooking as much of your proteins as you can at once. And again, if you can hey, I'm going to throw this in the Crock-Pot, I'm going to throw this in the pan, I'm going to maybe throw this in the oven at the same time. The more of that you can do, the better. Air fryer is also incredible. I love the I feel like for cooking potatoes and things like that, you can just take frozen potatoes, throw them right there in the air fryer, throw some seasoning on them, and it takes 15 minutes. Air fryer is a game changer. It's so much less of a task, I feel than having to put them in the oven for some reason. I don't know why that is, but it feels so much more accessible.
No, I agree. We want to get one of the ovens that is also an air fryer. So I guess that wouldn't be any different than putting it in an oven, but
that's a thing.
Yeah.
It's funny how though even that sounds oh yeah, I for sure use that, but not the oven. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know why
it's just
different,
quicker,
but it
maybe.
is. Yeah. It tastes better too.
So next up, buy food options that take minimal prep. And really, you can take this pretty far. I take this pretty far. Again, if I'm gonna get a chicken breast or a chicken tenderloin that's not that I have to cut, it's gross. I hate doing that. Especially chicken tenderloins where you have to pull the thing out. Mm-hmm. That's so gross. But that you can just dump it in the Crock-Pot. You basically don't have to touch it, and again, just shred it with a fork afterwards. It's extremely easy. Otherwise, I will typically just go with, I would get ground chicken instead of a chicken breast. It would be a ground chicken breast rather than a whole chicken breast. If I'm really focused on efficiency, if that's really the goal, again, you can just dump it in the pan, stir it as you cook it, and that's that. You don't have to go through all the work of cutting it up and prepping it. Things like pre-diced potatoes, that takes forever. Cutting up if you're gonna have a bunch of sweet potatoes for the week, I always will get you can get and again, make sure that they don't have any additional oils or anything on them, but it's very easy to get just plain shredded potatoes, basically hash browns or diced potatoes, Again, throw them in the air fryer, throw some seasoning on them. They're delicious. Frozen pre-diced veggies, really good option as well. Again, I'll kind of talk through like how I typically apply this a little bit more later on. Even like I have the option to go with like baby carrots as one of my vegetable sources. So I use that. I don't have to prep that. I can just buy the bag of them. Even things like I get like the little like individual like microwave rice containers where, you know, like the VT ones, you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea.
Okay, they're kind of like an oval shaped container.
Is it like the sticky rice?
Maybe.
I've seen
It's just
Natalie
jasmine
get
rice.
those maybe.
They're I'm sure you would know if you saw them, but I just get those like, and then it's basically like it's very easy to like, I know I have 246 grams of that. That's like what it comes out to in my meal plan. But anyways, even that, like I can just throw that in the microwave if I was putting together the rest of my meal, and cool, we're good there. Anything else you want to add to that before our next point?
No.
Okay. So next up, prep your building blocks at the start of the week. So for example, for me, my quote unquote building blocks for my meal plan are my proteins and carbs that take more than 2 to 3 minutes to prepare and cook or require cleanup outside of just like the dish that I'm eating it out of. So again, that would be like my chicken. I want to make sure I prep that in advance. I'm going to batch cook my ground beef. I'm going to air fry all of my potatoes. And then I don't put it in individual containers. I just throw in a big container, put it on my plate, along with like whatever add-ons I'm going to have alongside it. So like, again, if I'm going to do my potatoes, my chicken, my frozen vegetables, kind of throw them in there when I'm ready to eat it. Do you like split yours up into the individual meal containers for the week?
No, not usually. I'll do it the same way as you. But I think that if you're working from home like we do, that's a really good way to do it. But if you're working outside the home, doing it in individual containers, again, like plan for your morning to be rushed and for you to want to run out the door. And if it's like shout. This, you want to just have it to where it's already put together and you can just grab it and go.
That's a really good call. And I mean, if you're doing like something that was a little bit more mix and match, maybe, and you were good to like having a like put them together in the containers the night before or something like that, then more of this could work. But yeah, that is a really good call outside of that. And I mean, there's a couple ways you can approach this. So like, if we want to be the most dialed in, it would be like, okay, my potatoes, right? So how do I know like the cooked weight versus raw weight if I am going to be, again, just kind of dumping them all in this container rather than splitting it into the individual portions. So there you can like push your Tupperware that you're going to be containing them in after the fact on the food scale, tear it out. Weigh your potatoes bowl 4. Okay, I know this is like, let's say it's 500 grams of uncooked potatoes. Cook it, put that Tupperware back on the scale, tear it out again, weigh them after. Okay, let's say now it's 400. Then you know, okay, this lost, what is that, like 20% of its weight. I typically tell clients though, honestly, I think as long as you like I've like compared this and the numbers do come out pretty accurately. Typically your proteins are going to lose about 25% of their weight when you cook them. So typically I tell clients like, hey, we can just go with this, and it just makes it a little bit easier. So like, hey, if I'm supposed to eat 200 grams of ground beef raw, that's 150 grams cooked. So just multiply that times 0.75. Potatoes, pretty similarly, lose about 75% of lose about 25% of their weight when cooked. So again, same thing, multiply it times 0.75. So 200 grams cooked or raw potato equals 150 grams cooked typically. And I found that to be pretty close. I think honestly, like if you just do, as long as you're consistent with it, we can still adjust around it fairly well. There will be like, hey, if you cook the potatoes longer, yes, you'll like lose a little bit more water, but I don't think that's enough variability. It's not like the things like this, it's incredibly rare that that's gonna be the thing that makes or breaks your progress.
Yeah, you just have to be consistent with it. Like if you're boiling your potatoes one time and you're air frying it the next time, the air fried potatoes are gonna lose a lot more. And if you're using fattier meat, that's gonna lose a lot more than like a chicken tenderloin where it barely loses anything. So you gotta just be consistent.
Absolutely. Rice is a harder one. I typically, like when I'm in fat loss, estimate it triples in weight when cooked. That's kind of what I found, like 2.5 to 3x what the raw weight is. Anything else you would add there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then finally, minimize store time, trips to the store. I like going to the store personally. I really don't mind it. Like when I worked at the gym, I would go to the store every single day after work and just like wander around and listen to podcasts. My wife hates it, and I'm a lot less prone to do that now because it is okay. This is like more of a time suck.
Yeah.
I feel like it was calmer back then, but now, I mean, a few keys here, like with your fruits and veggies, your produce that goes bad quickly. I always get frozen. It's outside of like I have bananas in my meal plan now, so I don't get frozen bananas. Past that, like everything is, I always get frozen fruit, frozen veggies. And just, it takes like 30 seconds to thaw it out. Again, you can kind of like throw that in the microwave quick as you're putting together the rest of your meal, warm it all up together, whatever it may be. And then do you do like a pickup order typically?
We get Walmart delivery.
Nice. Yeah, I always do Instacart as well. You can like almost everywhere you can do Instacart if you don't want to pay for it. Typically, like you can do the pickup orders free, and it is just so much more convenient, and also just makes it easier. It's less time consuming, but also just makes it easier to like not buy things that you don't necessarily need or want in your house at the moment. That's very helpful as well, especially if you're going shopping when you're hungry. What else would you add there?
As far as minimizing store time.
Or just any other follow-up points? I know you have a note for moms here.
Yeah. So something that I hear from parents a lot of times is the family meal at the end of the day. And this is going to be different for everybody. Like I don't know that we do it like the best way. Sometimes I'll just fix different food for my kids because me and Nick just like eat our meal plans, and they don't care. My kids, as long as they like what they're eating, they've literally never asked me why I'm eating something different. I think as long as you don't make it weird, it's not a weird thing. But, so this doesn't have to be too much different, but I can 100% understand if you're wanting to like have a family meal that's not different, because that is common. So your kids can't eat the same meal as you. They might gripe and complain for a while, but you definitely, like, you're calling the shots, and but some kids have weird things with like picky, like, or like sensory issues. That's a separate thing. But for the most part, kids will get used to what you're feeding them over time. So my kids eat bland. I'm so sorry. My kids eat like bland meal prepped food because that's just all they know. I'll fix like 4 different meals and rotate them.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining like my mom. This is not parenting advice because I'm very much, my dog, I feel like gets better food than we do, and our dog is incredibly picky. So honestly, I'm the worst person to talk about this because I'm like, it's funny to think about, like, if my dog was a person, I don't know how well. It's a pretty spoiled kid because it's ridiculous. But my mom would, like, if it was ever anything we did, I was like, I remember one time she made pheasant because my dad would always go pheasant hunting, and like we're like, oh, Mom, really? Just like, you don't have to eat if you don't want to. And I feel like that was always it. It's so funny. It's funny for me to think about my mom, like, you were definitely not trying to make different meals, but also I guess with being like one of 9, maybe that's part of it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm sorry, continue with what you were saying.
So they'll at some point eat what you're giving them, or what we'll do is like, okay, this is what I made for dinner. One of my kids inevitably is like, I don't like this. And so I'm like, okay, I can make you some eggs. And it's like the same thing each time. I can make you some eggs. And so they'll know, like, okay, if I don't want to eat this, it's eggs, because that takes just a couple minutes. And then they're at least eating something. But again, like, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but they will, you don't have to fix like macaroni and cheese for the kids and then you eat your meal prepped chicken and veggies. Like, you can fix something that is sort of, for the entire family. Oh my gosh. I am so sorry. He is really going crazy with something.
I'm going to talk through. I will kind of, to make it helpful and kind of put this into application, we'll talk through what do you figure our meal plans and our meal prep looks like? And I think that was kind of a nice way to tie all of this together.
Let me make one more point on that, because Max is finally
Right.
laying down. And what I kept trying to get myself to with that babbling on was, one of the best ways I've found to do this is make a sort of like build your own meal type of situation. So like a taco bar where maybe you don't get like tortilla shells, or you do like corn tortillas and your kids do rice or flour tortillas or whatever it is they want. So you're all eating the same thing. Or make like a macro friendly casserole type dish. That way you can portion it out, make it fit your macros, and they can just add on things that are maybe a little higher fat, higher calories that you just choose to not add to your plate.
That's a really good idea. Okay, that makes sense. It's like taco bars, fajitas,
Yeah.
things like that.
Mexican
Okay, cool.
food.
Perfect. Honestly, the best. Corn tortillas, side note, also slap in a dieting phase. They're such good macros. Very
Yeah.
solid. Okay, so as far as our personal meal plans go, just kind of to walk through mine and how I prep it. My first meal, I'm just going to talk through my training day. My first meal is oats and cream of rice mixed together, blueberries, Greek yogurt, whey, almond butter. My second meal is rice, chicken, and low-fiber veggie. Third meal is rice, chicken, pineapple. And then my last meal is potato, beef, veggie, and an egg. And then I also have like intra-workout. I drink highly branched cyclic dextrin and some EAs and creatine. So basically how I go about prepping is Saturday or Sunday, I will just put it in an Instacart order for everything, drop it off at my door, it's the best. And then I will just throw a ton of chicken in the crock pot. At the same time that's cooking, I'll get that started. I will start cooking my ground beef, just put it all in. It's like 4 pounds, cook it all in one pan. And then at the same time that that's cooking, I will throw all of my potatoes in the air fryer, cook them in a bulk. So ultimately like that, like the air fryer and the ground beef takes me like 15, 20 minutes to cook. Then the chicken, I just, again, will take out like the next morning and shred it before I start the day. And honestly, that's like my prep for the week. So then basically, like that's really like all the prep that I have to do at the start of the week. And then basically what I will do is that first meal. So the only meal that I really have to cook for is the last meal of the day. That meal that's like the potato, the beef, the high fiber veggie of choice, which for me it's carrots, and then there's egg. So basically I have to cook an egg. Everyone who's like tried to meal prep eggs in advance and like put it in the fridge knows it's fucking gross. Yeah. Especially like I used to do scrambled eggs. When I was doing my fat loss with Brandon Cruz, I do scrambled eggs, put them in a container, and there's like the egg juice at the bottom.
Ew.
Oh my God. We went on that trip around Arizona where I prepped all of my stuff for like 5 days ahead of time. Eggs by the end were quite gross. But I have to cook that egg. That takes a couple minutes. So as I'm like waiting for my egg to cook on the oven, I will at the same time on the stove, I'll at the same time like be putting together and cooking my meal for my breakfast for the next day. So I always prep my breakfast for the next day the night before. That's kind of like my evening checklist of things to do. So that's good to go in the mornings. And then a lot of times I'll put together even like if I'm training the next day, I'll put like my intro workout together in a little container as well. Then from there, my second meal, again, just jasmine rice, chicken breast. So those like VT rice containers I get, you just got to stab some holes in it, throw it in the microwave for 2 minutes while I'm waiting for that to warm up. I will just take my chicken out of the fridge, weigh it out, put it in the bowl. Frozen veggies, weigh them out, put them in the bowl. Then again, microwave it all again together and we're good to go. Same thing for the next meal. And that's my meal prep, honestly. Not a lot to it.
Mine is not too much different. My first meal is cream of rice. I mix a bunch of things together. Second meal on training days is also cream of rice with things mixed together. And if I'm not training, it's a Ninja Creamy, which is essentially like protein powder and strawberries. Third meal is chicken and almonds or ground beef without almonds with some butternut squash and green beans. And then the last meal is chicken and veggies or or ground turkey and veggies with almonds and an orange. So I will just throw a pan. I'll throw like a container of the lean ground turkey in a pan and ground that all up. I'll put some chicken tenderloins in the air fryer and fix those, which are really fast. The tenderloins cook really fast, so that's nice. And then nice. Just like chop up a butternut squash, because unfortunately the pre-cut butternut squash is kind of gross.
I can see that.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's just kind of brown.
Yeah. So that part is kind of a pain in the butt because you have to peel a big squash and dig the seeds out, but it's worth it. So I do that and cut it up into pieces so that I can just measure that out and throw it in the air fryer whenever I'm working, and then eat all that. So it's very, very similar to yours. Dinner, I will just assemble things because it's just raw veggies, raw carrots and cucumber with the meat and almonds. So I'll just kind of assemble that. While I'm fixing that and the rest of the family's food, I will also fix breakfast for the next morning so that we can just grab that out of the fridge in the morning. So just like you do, I'm kind of just assembling things that are mostly already cooked throughout the day. As far as like putting everything into individual containers, we also do one big meal prep on the weekends for my husband because he's not working from home. And so we do the individual container thing for him. And basically it's like, okay, whatever this meal is, times 7, put that all into the oven. And then once it's cooked, we just divide it out into containers. So we do like a big instant pot of rice. So he does like 120 grams of rice times 7. It's a giant thing of rice, and we just divide it out into the 7 containers. And then same thing with like a big casserole dish of cream of rice and berries and stuff. Times it by 7, put it in there and bake it. So that's, I mean, it's not like fancy meals, but it's so much easier than fixing all of that every single day and doing all those dishes.
How long do you think like your meal prep takes you on the big meal prep day?
For my own, it's like 10 minutes. For Nick's, it's longer. Like mixing that much cream of rice together is a lot of food. It's probably an hour, so still not bad at all for whatever it is, 7 meals times, I think we meal prep 3 of his daily meals, and the rest of them he just kind of throws together.
And do you do this year round or just when you're in a fat loss phase?
Year round, because in a build phase, I still don't want to have to cook that protein every day.
Yeah.
So the side stuff that's different, I will maybe have like rice, and that's easy enough to just measure out and cook in the moment. Maybe I'll have like cereal or something different than what I'm having currently, but it's still like the protein is pre-cooked. That's the thing that takes the longest. That's more just a convenience thing for me than it is like wanting to avoid being more food focused. That's not really an issue as much in a build phase.
Yeah, I think that it's a very common mistake, and like people think of like meal prep for fat loss, but don't do it when we're building. And that is, man, what I've done in the past, your food selection is terrible. It's like I'm just basically living off of protein and like whatever I can, like protein shakes and whatever I can grab. And it just doesn't go well, where there's for sure more flexibility there. Like I'll have more meals out, or I might be more prone to, hey, maybe I do want to swap like this carb source for this carb source, right? And there's a lot more room for things like that because satiety, like you being hungry, isn't nearly as much of an issue. And it might be more like, hey, maybe I follow this 70 to 80% of the time. Maybe I prepped like for 2 meals of the week, or 2 meals of the day rather than 3 meals or 4 meals of the day, for example. But year round, it just sets you up for so much more success, especially again, like those, it's just going to be so time consuming to like, it's not going to be less time consuming when we're outside of that phase. And it still is important that we're hitting our micronutrient needs, that we're eating quality food sources and things of that nature. So year round, it's very helpful. Anything else to add before we wrap this up?
I don't think so.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully y'all enjoy the show. If you did so, do us a huge favor. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. If you would like to apply for coaching, just hit the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.